Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nishcast. I'm the Diggly Dude, Dr. Peptoid Panther Mr. Slippers, here for a little rugby league episode of the Niggly Nishcast. More specifically, International Rugby League. Boy, we love a bit of international footy round these ways. And I'm going to preview the Kiwis versus Kangaroos. We've got Kiwi Ferns versus Jillaroos as well. Both of those games are going down tomorrow night, Friday night. I'm recording this at 9:23 a.m. Thursday the 24th of October. Churchill. We got that double header tomorrow night. There's also a Junior Kangaroos game against France. Who cares about that? The Junior Kangaroos are absolutely stacked. And I'm going to say right now that the Junior Kangaroos, my preview for the Junior Kangaroos versus France game is that the Junior Kangaroos will put 50 points on France. Now, Jillaroos Kiwi Ferns tomorrow night, 7:40 p.m. Then we have Kiwis versus Kangaroos at 10:10 p.m. And Saturday, down in the Waikato, we have Tonga Invitational taking on Great Britain. So I'll preview that game as well. This morning I wrote the Kiwis versus Kangaroos preview and the Kiwi Ferns versus Jillaroos preview. So check those out if you do like a bit of reading. Tomorrow my intention is to write about the Tonga Great Britain game, mainly from a Tongan angle, and we'll get to that in a second. We will start with the Kiwi Ferns versus Jillaroos. And first thing here with regards to the Australian Jillaroos squad is that victories Welsh has been named on the bench for Australia. She was someone that I was keeping a close eye on, given that she was born and raised in Northland, Aotearoa, I think a little place called Taipa. And then she moved to Australia. She was one of the better players of NRL Women's, playing fullback for the Dragons. So she was eligible for Aotearoa and Australia, and she went with Australia. There's a weird story on NRL.com, like weird from a Kiwi perspective, in which victories Welsh talks about how she didn't really like James Tamou for changing to Australia, and now she is representing Australia. And to me it just reinforces different strokes for different folks, because you've got some people like those who are opting to play for Tonga. You know, they're choosing to play for Tonga to honour their heritage, to honour their families, to honour their Tongan culture. And then you have someone like Nelson Asofa-Solomona, who is choosing to play for Aotearoa and express great pride and joy in playing for Aotearoa, because Aotearoa is the land of opportunity for him and his family. He is Samoan heritage, but he was raised in Wellington, and he feels a loyalty to Aotearoa for the opportunities that Aotearoa has provided. So you've got two angles there. You've got wanting to represent your family history, your family lineage, represent your parents and their culture, and then in the same kind of vibe, you've got, well, my family came to this country for more opportunities, and this country has provided those opportunities. I have a strong connection to New Zealand in this instance, and I want to represent New Zealand. For victories Welsh, and a lot of those other players, like James Tamou, maybe Callum Ponga as well, who choose to represent Australia over Aotearoa, it's that vibe of Australia has provided me and my family with all these other opportunities, and that's why I want to represent Australia, because Australia has given me so much, and apparently given me so much that New Zealand, Aotearoa, could not give me. And then you've also got players who, like, you've got guys like Bailey Simonson. Excuse me while I go down this tangent. Bailey Simonson and Remus Smith, both of them were born and raised in Australia. They have a little twist because Remus Smith's father played for the Kiwis, and Bailey Simonson, his father played for the All Blacks, so they do have that little twist there. But they were born and raised in Australia, and they want to represent their culture. They want to represent their hearty Kiwiness. So again, you've just got two angles here. You've got the people who want to represent the new land in terms of the opportunities and all the opportunities that moving to a new country has provided them, and then you've got other people who want to represent their culture, their heritage, their lineage, where their heart and soul is. So it's just different strokes for different folks, but there's two different paths you can go down. And to be honest, I don't think you can even have an opinion on someone's decision to represent a country. That's their decision. They've made it in connection with their soul, with their heart. They've aligned all their thoughts, their needs, their wants, their desires, and they've made their decision. So you just can't even have an opinion about what country someone wants to represent. That's their decision, and everyone's different. Some people are going to represent their culture, heritage, whānau, lineage, ancestors, and then some people are going to choose to represent the new opportunities that a country has provided them. So whatever. But Pateli Vete Welsh is named in a number 14 role for the Jillaroos, coming off the bench utility. So watch out for her if you like Australia. As for Aotearoa, this is a fairly similar group to the group that played against Samoa, but if we look back to the Kiwi Ferns versus Jillaroos game last year, it's a vastly different team, vastly different squad. So let's just start with the outside backs. Api Nichols is again at fullback, and then you've got Hani Hirami Smiler starting at centre. And those are the only two players from the last year's corresponding fixture against the Jillaroos who are in the outside back group for this year's fixture. So 2 of the 5 outside backs are in the team again. Maitua Fetarika is in this Kiwi Ferns team, but last year against Australia she started at centre. Now she's coming off the bench, and I'll talk about her when I go through the forward pack. Other players from the outside backs who played last year, you got Kali Takawa on the wing and Langi Vianu on the wing as well. This year, this test versus Jillaroos, our wingers are Kiana Takarangi and Atawhai Tupaia. So you got Api Nichols at fullback, Takarangi on a wing, Tupaia on a wing, Hani Hirami at centre, and Jules Newman at centre as well. The halves for the Kiwi Ferns are Shante Poko and Racine McGregor. Last year against Australia, the halves were Racine McGregor and Kimiora Ngati. The forward pack for this game against Australia is Aneta Nu'uasala, Amber Hall and Georgia Hale starting in the middle. Crystal Rota starts at hooker, Angelina Liatawa and Crystal Tamarua starting on the edges. Last year there was no Crystal Rota, and you had pretty much a completely different forward pack. Last year the starting forward pack was Ngā Tokoturu Arakua, Nita Maynard, Aishali Smalley, Angelina Liatawa, Tuila Fotumawala and Laura Mariu, and the only player who is starting again is Angelina Liatawa, who I've talked about her weird selections with the Warriors. So there is no Ngā Tokoturu Arakua, there is no Laura Mariu, but you do have, and there's no Aishali Smalley, I don't think, for this game. She is in the squad, but apparently she picked up an injury in the 9, so she won't play here. She's on an extended bench. Now, funky bits and pieces from the starting forward pack group. You have Angelina Liatawa starting on the edge, which is great to see. Amber Hall is starting at prop along with Aneta Nu'uasala. Amber Hall had 2 Team of the Week selections in NRL Women's competition this year, so she was part of the Brisbane Broncos championship team, and she in her first NRL women's campaign, she basically laid down the gauntlet that she is one of the best middle forwards in the competition, which is awesome. And Crystal Tamarua coming onto an edge, which is good to see. Georgia Hale starts at lock. Last year in this fixture, Georgia Hale came off the bench, and she has played in the halves previously as well. Now she's playing this lock role for the Kiwi Ferns and the Warriors. And this is... I'll just roll through the selections, then I'll get into style of play and stuff like that as well. On the bench for the Kiwi Ferns, you got Nita Maynard, Tuila Fotumoala, Billie Jean Ale, and Maitua Federica. So Federica, last year she played centre, now she's coming off the bench. Tuila Fotumoala, last year she started as an edge forward, now she's coming off the bench. Billie Jean Ale comes into the squad. I think this is her debut game. And this is a product of Fotumoala and Federica moving to the Dragons, where Federica, I think she also had 2 Team of the Week selections during NRL Women's, but she was starting as a middle forward. So just roll this through your mind. Last year in the Kiwi Ferns, Federica started at centre. She played edge forward and centre for the Brisbane Broncos in the first NRL Women's competition. Then she moved to the Dragons, and come game 1, Fotumoala and Maitua Federica starting middle forwards. Fotumoala got that suspension, which was a bit of a bummer, and then Federica just kept playing as a starting prop for the Dragons. So having Federica, even Billie Jean Ale, Fotumoala coming off the bench, that's some serious impact coming off the bench. And when you consider Angelina Leotawa she was my best player for the Warriors during NRL Women's. She's a dynamic, robust runner of the footy and very mobile, nimble footwork. Amber Hall and No'osala are 2 of the best forwards in the women's game. So you've got some serious power, some serious dynamic ball runners through the middle, and that's a major strength for the Kiwi Ferns. And then you've also got Crystal Rota and Nita Maynard, who are going to get in around dummy half. They're going to run. They're going to get quick play the balls from their big forwards. And they're going to be a major factor, I believe, especially Crystal Rota. When she runs, she's not overly fast, but she kind of glides. And she can spot space and move her body and adjust and set plays up nicely. So if they get a bit of momentum through the middle from those big forwards, expect to see Crystal Rota get out of dummy half. And then you can play Georgia Hale as a middle forward when you have some big boppers around her. Georgia Hale is a reasonably good defender, and then in attack, she offers the skills of a half, so she can help shift the footy and get it out to the edges where the Kiwi Ferns have a bit of strike power as well. So the combination of a very robust forward pack, running dummy halves, and playmakers, skillful, classy playmakers in Georgia Hale, Shante Poko, and Racine McGregor, I'm fairly excited, I'm fairly optimistic, I'm fairly eager to see the Kiwi Ferns upset the Jillaroos. We saw a bit of niggle in the Kiwi Ferns World Cup 9's victory over the Australian team, and I don't know too much about Australia, so that's all that's holding me back from really celebrating the Kiwi Ferns. But knowing what I know about this Kiwi Ferns team, they are stacked. Anytime you're playing with Fotumoala and Federica coming off the bench, you're going to be in a reasonably solid position, and now they've got the skill to accompany those robust forwards. So you've got the emergence of Shante Poko, who can do a bit of everything as a half, big body as well, so if she runs the footy. Racing McGregor just gets better and better and better and better. She won a championship with the Brisbane Broncos, and then again, having Georgia Hale in the middle of the park shifting the footy, I'm excited, because having Georgia Hale in the middle means that you can get the footy directly to someone like Angelina Leotawa quickly and efficiently, or you can shift it out to Honey Hirami Smiler, who is the best centre along with Jessica Surgis in the world. So I'm picking an upset for the Kiwi Ferns. I'm very excited to see what the Kiwi Ferns can do against Australia. And watch out for Angelina Leotawa on an edge. And also, I'm going to say Whatumoala and Whetarika coming off the bench. So when that second shift comes into action, I think you're going to see the Kiwi Ferns start to dominate the middle of the park coming up against the Australian bench. Rightio, we'll go to the Kiwis versus Kangaroos, and let's just quickly roll through the Kiwis team. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback, Ken Mamalo and Jermaine Saka on the wings, Shans Nickel-Clockstead, Joseph Manu at centre, Sean Johnson and Benji Marshall are the halves, Lisana Mao, Jared Wairea Hargraves and Adam Blair are your middle forwards, with Brandon Smith starting at hooker. Britton, Nakora and Kenny Bromwich are your edge forwards. Jerome Hughes, Zane Tedadvano, Braden Hamlin-Uele, Corey Harawira Naira are your bench. Obviously the big selection here is Shans Nickel-Clockstead at centre, but this isn't as dramatic as it may seem, because Shans Nickel-Clockstead played a lot of centre coming through the Melbourne Storm, SG Ball and under-20s. He played a lot of every position. He played fullback, he played halves, he played wing, and he also played centre. And there is a connection between the Melbourne Storm and Michael Maguire. Michael Maguire went to coach with Craig Bellamy at the Melbourne Storm because he already had a relationship with Craig Bellamy from their days at the Canberra Raiders. And I believe Michael Maguire would have done a bit of research around Shans Nickel-Clockstead's value at centre. Like, he could have hit up the Melbourne Storm and just asked for a few opinions. Shans Nickel-Clockstead in 2016, after joining the Warriors, was named in the reserve grade team of the year at centre. So Shans Nickel-Clockstead is no stranger to centre. So you've got all of that kind of historical stuff. And then during the nines, Shans Nickel-Clockstead pretty much exclusively played left centre. Obviously, you don't have the same positions in nines footy as you do in 13s, but he was in the left centre position. He was not on the wing, and he was not in the middle. He was at left centre, and that was because Michael Maguire wanted him to play left centre ahead of a Kiwis test, because we also had a situation where Shans Nickel-Clockstead pulled out of the Cook Islands squad for the nines to rest and recuperate. But then he was appearing for New Zealand in the nines. And Shans Nickel-Clockstead said that the opportunity to get into Kiwis camp ahead of a Kiwis test was the reason he wanted to play the nines for New Zealand. And that is because Michael Maguire outlined the plan to Shans Nickel-Clockstead. I believe Michael Maguire told Shans Nickel-Clockstead prior to the nines, I'm reasonably confident you are going to play left centre for the Kiwis against Australia and then in the games against Great Britain as well. What needs to happen now is that I'd love to get you into camp and I'd love to get you into the nines so we can start to set things up for the test matches. That's why Shans Nickel-Clockstead came in to play the nines. So this isn't like a crazy selection from Michael Maguire. It's, in terms of centre depth, like obviously there's no Isan Masters. He's unavailable for this test. Dean Whare could have been a possibility. Peter Hiku could have been a possibility. And in terms of like young centre depth for Aotearoa, like just the reason not to stress, not to worry, you've got Remus Smith and Morgan Harper can both play centre with the Bulldogs, and you've got a young crop of players, guys like Patrick Herbert with the Warriors, Jackson Ferris with the Sharks, Mawene Hiroti with the Rabbitohs, Stephen Masters with the Rabbitohs. You've also got someone named Jackson Paulo coming through with the Rabbitohs as well. So there's no shortage of young players coming through to put their hands up. So don't worry about the centre depth. But right now, no Isan Masters. Good opportunity for Shans Nickel-Clockstead to come in and play centre. There's a couple of clips on YouTube of him playing junior footy for the Melbourne Storm, and there's a highlights package, and it features some very solid defense from Shans Nickel-Clockstead at centre. And so that's reason to be confident that he can do a job against. He'll probably line up against Jack Whiten, maybe? Like, they're both left-sided players. Latrell Mitchell and Jack Whiten are both left-sided players, but Latrell Mitchell will probably be left centre. So Shands-Nickel-Klokstad will line up against Jack Whiten, and I'm confident he can do a defensive job against Whiten, especially given the preparation he has been afforded under Michael Maguire. Jermaine Isako comes in. There's no Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, so Isako comes in to start on the wing, which is fair enough. Sean Johnson, Benji Marshall on the halves, all good. Couple of other players missing, so no Isan Masters, no Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, no Jesse Bromwich, no James Fisher-Harris, no Nelson Asofa-Solomona, and no Joseph Tapine. Joseph Tapine is in the squad, but I think he is suspended or unavailable for this game. So in the forward pack, no Jesse Bromwich, Asofa-Solomona, Fisher-Harris, or Tapine. Those are 4 forwards, in my opinion, who are always part of a top 17 Kiwis team. So this is an under-strength Kiwis forward pack. That's why Adam Blair's starting at lock. Also because on the bench, Jerome Hughes is the only player with international experience. Zane Tedavano, Braden Hamlin-Uele, and Corey Harawira-Naera haven't played international footy yet. So Adam Blair comes in. This is a complete, second string. There's still some top tier guys, I'll get to that in a second, but Tedavano, Hamlin-Uele, Corey Harawira-Naera, and Adam Blair are second string Kiwis forwards, straight up. That's what they are. They're not in the same caliber as Jesse Bromwich, Asofa-Solomona, Tapine, Fisher-Harris. That's why Adam Blair's playing. So don't stress too much about Adam Blair. He comes in to do a job. This doesn't mean he's ranked among the best forwards for Aotearoa. He's there because a couple of players are unavailable and there's a bit of a lack of experience in that forward pack. So Adam Blair comes in, fair enough, all good. What we also have is a clear situation of Britton Nakora and Kenny Bromwich being the best available edge forwards. The only player who I can see coming into that equation is Tohu Harris, if he ever plays footy again. Tohu Harris just disappears. He just disappears. I don't know what Tohu Harris is up to. He's obviously taking time away thanks to injury. Didn't play much footy this year. And at this stage, we don't even know if Tohu Harris is going to come back and play at any high level. He's just always battling injury and can't string together consistent games. So until Tohu Harris comes back into the equation, your starting edge forwards under Michael Maguire, apart from unavailability, are probably always going to be Britton Nakora and Kenny Bromwich, which I'm happy with. I don't mind that. Kenny Bromwich does a great job for the Melbourne Storm. Britton Nakora is extremely athletic, has that combination with Sean Johnson, and does a fairly good job as well. Brandon Smith starting at hooker. All good. Like that a lot. This, I just think this is a really good opportunity for Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Sean Johnson. We know what Benji Marshall's credentials and legacy is already set in stone. This dude is the best player ever from Aotearoa. He is an absolute legend, and he could add to that with strong performances for Aotearoa later in his career, but to my mind, Benji Marshall is already established as a Kiwis GOAT. For guys like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Sean Johnson, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, fantastic for the Warriors, but the Warriors are shit. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck can take his whole reputation, legacy, and just credentials to a whole new level if he can put in consistently dominant performances for Aotearoa, because I judge players on, what are you doing in the international arena? Everyone wants to talk about NRL footy. Yeah, he's the best because he's the best in the NRL. What does he do internationally? What do you do when you come up against England and New Zealand? What do you do when you come up against the eager Tonga team? How do you perform then? Because that's the highest level of footy in existence. So what are you doing in the international arena? So for guys like Tuivasa-Sheck, who the thing holding Tuivasa-Sheck back kinda is the performance of the Warriors. Now that's not his fault, but he can kinda paper over that and establish himself as one of the best, if not the best, with dominant performances for Aotearoa. Shaun Johnson's got a bit of a sketchy record in the NRL. He isn't exactly consistent every week, and he's someone who there's still uncertainty around Shaun Johnson and whether he can lead a team to an NRL premiership. There are amazing moments in the NRL with Shaun Johnson, but there are also the lows that come with Shaun Johnson as well, but inconsistent. But for Aotearoa, if Shaun Johnson can dominate and be a part of a excessively strong Kiwis team and lead the Kiwis with his sublime work, like Tuivasa-Sheck, Shaun Johnson's legacy just hits another level. These dudes are etching themselves into the history books for Aotearoa. Now that's if they can lead the Kiwis to victories over Australia consistently, or just in this game, whatever, but we'll wait and see. Same applies for Brandon Smith, because Brandon Smith plays in the NRL as a middle forward. That's his job for the Melbourne Storm. Come off the bench, play 50 minutes as a middle forward. Brandon Smith is the Kiwis' best hooker, and he plays as a middle forward for the Melbourne Storm. So if Brandon Smith can establish himself with dominant performances for Aotearoa, this dude is just going to go in the history books as one of the fucking legends. So that kind of discussion is available with what these players are doing at the international level, because I look to someone like Ken Mamalo. Ken Mamalo's been consistently improving, developing, and consistently good for the Warriors over the last 2 seasons, and he's taken that into the Kiwis. So that's why I believe Ken Mamalo is one of the best wingers in the game, up there with Josh Adokara, who will also be in this game as well, because Ken Mamalo performs strongly for Aotearoa in the international arena. Ken Mamalo isn't just a good winger in the NRL. Ken Mamalo takes those performances, ramps it up a level for international footy, as does Joseph Manu. Joseph Manu stands up in grand finals and performs at a high level. Joseph Manu stands up in international footy and performs at a higher level. These dudes are taking their reputation credentials to a higher level, which is amazing. And that's what I want to see from Tuivasa-Sheck and Shaun Johnson consistently, and just at a better level than Mamalo and Manu as well. So as for how this game might play out, I am a bit wary about the Kiwis forward pack. I think Australia have the advantage in the forwards, and the challenge will be for the Kiwis forward pack to maintain parity and level footing with Australia in the forwards. And if they can do that, I think the Kiwis have enough firepower in their playmaking group, and they have some chemistry, they have some repetitions to their spine that I think is going to be hugely beneficial. And assuming the forward pack can contain and sustain like a solid footing with Australia, I believe the Kiwis could pose a few threats with their Shaun Johnson, Benji Marshall, and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. And how Tuivasa-Sheck is used is going to be fascinating, because regardless of how good he is for the Warriors, I don't think he's used as effectively as he should be. And I'm interested, just watch to see if Tuivasa-Sheck is hovering around the ruck, if he is just pushing up in support of the footy, and is just like playing more like James Tedesco, because James Tedesco is like a magnet to the footy. Anywhere the footy is, James Tedesco is, and he is always posing a threat. With the Warriors, Tuivasa-Sheck is kind of pushed out to the edges and told to do a lot of grunt work. Nah, just I want to see Tuivasa-Sheck, especially in this Kiwis team, like with the speed and skill and offloading, quick play the balls that they might get. Tuivasa-Sheck just needs to stay around the ruck and pounce on any opportunities. So watch out for that, just the usage of Tuivasa-Sheck for the Kiwis. And it's a massive test for this forward pack because, as I said, Teravano, Hamlin Uele, Harawira Naira haven't played international footy before. Hamlin Uele could command a whole new wave of selection for the Kiwis. Like he was emphatic for the Cronulla Sharks during the season, coming off the bench, and this is a great opportunity for the Hamlin Uele and Teravano predominantly to make their case for further selections in stronger Kiwis forward packs. And I think Hamlin Uele is the dude with the highest upside. Like he's got the most to offer in that role, and it will need a dominant performance from Hamlin Uele coming off the bench to give the Kiwis a bit of a boost in that second wave. But yeah, the Australian forward pack is stacked, and it's whether the Kiwis can compete with that and give their playmakers a platform from which they work their magic. Because if that's the case, I can see the Kiwis coming up with a bit of an upset here. It's possible, very, very possible. And with the bigger picture in mind, everything's been pretty damn solid under Michael Maguire. You had a win against Australia last year. They lost the Denver test, which was a bummer, but that was Michael Maguire's first game in charge. They went to England. It was a bit up and down against England, which is to be expected, like first tour away for a lot of those lads. And then they came back and handled Tonga reasonably comfortably. So this is, like, considering last time against Australia, they kind of ambushed Australia. That's what it felt like. Now, we're going to get a better insight into the Kiwis under Coach Maguire and what they are capable of, like how we should be judging this Kiwis team. Because if the Kiwis put in a dominant performance, a strong performance, and win, now we're looking at like a... Now we're talking. Now we're like, yo, this Kiwis team under Michael Maguire, that was under strength, and they really competed against Australia, grabbed the win. There's clutch. They got... They were aggressive, high energy, great attitude, and now they've defeated Australia in consecutive tests against Australia. That would be very, very exciting, and we would raise our expectations about the standing of Kiwis Rugby League. Alternatively, they could put in a really good performance and just fall short, and that would just allude to more development needed, more time needed under Michael Maguire, and they're getting the full strength squad back together. Or we could just see that there was a flash in the pan and they have a lot of work to do to consistently compete against Australia. So somehow we're going to find out where the Kiwis sit in that scale, and that's what I'm most interested in for the Kiwis against Australia. Rightio, Tonga Invitational versus Great Britain. Tonga have Will Hopewari at fullback, Dave Fusatua, Daniel Tupou are your wingers, Michael Jennings, Kotoni Staggs are your centres, Tui Lolahia, Etta Hingano are your halves, Andrew Fafita, Suyosua Tokiaho, Jason Taumalolo are your middle forwards, Saliva Havili starting at hooker, Ben Murdoch-Masila and Manu Ma'u on the edges, Sione Katoa, Adam Whenua-Blake, John Asiata, Sitili Tupunuia on the bench. They are playing Great Britain. Who cares about the Great Britain team? The Tongan team is reasonably full strength. I would only suggest that Manasi Fainu coming in for Sione Katoa would be the major change that would take Tonga to a higher level. That would be Tonga at full strength. Otherwise, this is Tonga full strength, and you can kind of sense that by the selection of Ben Murdoch-Masila as an edge forward and having Kotoni Staggs at centre, for example. Like, Tonga's not really fucking around here despite their situation. being the Tonga Invitational. What I will say about Tonga is that they haven't quite capitalized on what happened at the World Cup. After the World Cup, let me just check some of these results. So the World Cup happens, everyone's incredibly high on Tonga. Everyone loves what they offer, and to be honest, Tonga's rise has opened doors for the likes of, New Zealand and Australia, because there's just more money floating around because Tonga's fans come in and they show up. So there's just more money floating around, and that has helped build a bit more buzz around international rugby league. So that's all well and good. However, after the World Cup, Tonga defeated Samoa 22-38. Then they lost to Australia last year, and then this year they lost to New Zealand. So since the World Cup, Tonga have lost 2 of their 3 games, and after making massive waves at the World Cup, Tonga lost their games to Australia and New Zealand. So they haven't done a whole lot to capitalise on their World Cup success. Then you have the dramas with the board and the fact that we're playing with a Tongan invitational team, and that whole situation, which was incredibly messy and very undesirable, considering this discussion on Tonga capitalising on the World Cup success. This is not what you want to happen. And also, we had a Tongan team that was fairly mediocre in the 9s. So since the World Cup success, Tonga have lost their games to Australia and New Zealand. They've had a boardroom drama and just massive player dramas in conjunction with the board, like infighting. And then you had the World Cup of 9s. So instead of capitalising on their World Cup success, Tonga has basically gone the other route. No one's talking about it though. No one's talking about how Tonga haven't backed up their World Cup success. I'm just keeping it real here. I'm just saying the results. They lost to Australia. They lost to New Zealand. They've had mad dramas in fighting. And they were reasonably crap at the World Cup 9s. Now they take on Great Britain. And I can definitely see Tonga rallying and just coming out with all sorts of energy, excitement, enthusiasm to take on England, defeat England, and reclaim Great Britain, and reclaim, their standing as the International Rugby League hype machines. Also, I can see Tonga losing to Great Britain, and then we're just wondering, now add another loss. So since the World Cup, they would have lost to all the 3 big nations, and there's no real movement forward, if you catch my drift. So I'm fascinated by what Tonga do against Great Britain, whether they grab their situation by the balls and are capable of rectifying their situation after the World Cup. Because they need to get a win. They need to get a win against a big nation if they want to hit that next level. Great Britain won't be fucking around though. Great Britain won't be underestimating Tonga, and they won't be underprepared. You've got Elliot Whitehead, John Bateman in the team, James Graham, Josh Hodgson at hooker, Jackson Hastings, Gareth Widdop in your halves, pretty funky halves pairing, Lachlan Coote at fullback. So there's no shortage of talent and ruggedness in that England team, and they will be very eager to make an impression before those games against New Zealand after this game against Tonga. So it's just very, very interesting about the Tongan invitational team and what they dish up against Great Britain. Whanatesi Niu was a standout for Tonga in the World Cup 9s. Whanatesi Niu, he's with the Brisbane Broncos, primarily a fullback, and if anything, the most positive thing about Tongan Rugby League and I mean that in a general term, not the organisation. What we've seen since the World Cup is a greater emphasis on bringing younger players through. So that's really positive. That's really good because you've got someone like Satili Tupuanuia coming through into the Tongan team. You have guys like Moeaki Fotuaika, who's not in this team, but will be in every Tongan team moving forward as long as he's available. And Manasi Whainu's come through. Now you got Finatesi Niu in the wider squad for this game. The 9 squad had Peter Holla with the Cowboys, very robust middle forward. You have William Whakato Mafe, who is under 20s with the Warriors. So the Tonga have done a good job under Christian Wolf of integrating younger players into their camps, into their squads, into their teams to ensure that there is a bit of a future rolling forward, that we're not just relying on the big names, that we are developing players and we are giving them an opportunity, a pathway with Tonga. I just don't know what's going to happen in this game, and I think everyone is still on that kind of honeymoon from the World Cup, and people haven't actually looked strictly at results. Samoa weren't in a great position for that game against Tonga last year. Like, Samoan Rugby League wasn't at the level that Tongan Rugby League was after the World Cup. So it wasn't like Tonga were the better team. They should have been in Samoa in that game. And then losing to Australia, losing to New Zealand, dramas, poor World Cup 9's performance, and now we have this point where they are playing against Great Britain, and it's up to Tonga what direction they want to take this in with their performance against Great Britain. So I'm going to be very interested in how Tonga perform against Great Britain, and there's the chance that they get everyone back on board and they show that they can push on as a rugby league force, because that's why Fafita, Tokiaho, Taumalolo, those dudes are leading this Tongan revolution, is because they want to make Tonga a powerhouse. You can't be a powerhouse if you've done what they have done after the World Cup. That's not powerhouse status. That's just poor status. That's mediocrity. It's not even mediocre. Like, you've lost more games than you've won. You've had more negative situations than you've had positive situations. So what are we up to? All of that feeds into this game against Great Britain. So very, very, very interested about what happens against Great Britain for Tonga. So again, I'll roll through this little schedule. Kiwi Ferns versus Jillaroos, 7:40 p.m. Friday night. Kiwis versus Australia, 10:10 p.m. Friday night over in Australia. Saturday in Hamilton, 8 p.m. Tonga versus Great Britain. So I'll be back after the round of games to wrap them all up and offer thoughts, ideas, and opinions. If you do enjoy the Niche Cast and you get a bit of value out of listening to these episodes, jump on Patreon, support us on Patreon. Patreon is the best way to support us. It's directly to us. Your support goes a long way, and any generosity you offer towards us, our whole mission is to reciprocate it back to you in different ways. So definitely jump on Patreon, support us. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the weekend of Rugby League, and if you like a bit of cricket, we're going to be recording a Plunkett Shield episode of the Niche Cast tomorrow, and then I'll be back on Monday or Tuesday with another Rugby League episode of the Niche Cast. Stay beautiful, kia kaha.